This is 2 Minutes Together, a ministry of Central Lutheran Church, Eugene, Oregon. I'm Pastor Ben. This week, in our Old Testament reading, we have a reading from the book of Amos. Amos famously focuses on what we would call social justice. How are you caring for the poor among you, the widows, those downtrodden? And the background of this is that Amos is speaking to what was called the Northern Kingdom. This was after a civil war in the history of Israel where the people in the north broke off and set up their own country, which had several consequences, but one of them was that they no longer lived in the same country as where the temple was. And they were thinking about their religiosity in terms of temple. How do we go worship God? And there's a lot of merit in saying how we can worship God, but it becomes a real challenge if you can't get to the temple. And frankly, even if it was the same country, it's a long way away, and you'd have to walk there. And Amos says, you are currently hand-wringing about how you can worship, even though you don't have access to be able to worship, but instead says, so instead of focusing on that, how are you caring for the poor and the widows? How are you caring for your neighbor right now, right where you are? And Amos has a hard message for them, that in order to be the people of God, you are to be caring for these people, and he'll charge them, and currently you're not doing it. You're doing a very bad job of it. And it's a hard charge. But if we could hear behind that charge, also, Amos is saying, how are you living every day? Because that matters to God. You might not be able to get to the temple. You might not be able to worship in that way. But right where you are, there is where God meets you. There's where you reach out, what we would call being the hands and feet of Jesus, where we are the means of grace to one another. And this could speak to so many of us who may not be able to come to church very frequently. Some people are still being very cautious with the pandemic. Some people may be geographically separate. But right where you are, how are you being Christ to one another? How are you reaching out? How are you seeing your neighbor, seeing the poor, where you are right now? That's the real message behind this. Where you are is spiritually significant, it matters, and you matter. This is 2 Minutes Together. I'm Pastor Ben.